Hello, dear colleagues. My name is Tatiana Fadeyeva, and I'm here today to talk to you about the modern city and its reality, representation, and framing. There are cities like Moscow, Paris, or Rio de Janeiro, and then there are their symbolic representations in maps, layouts, in movies and photos. There are different registers of reality and different ways of interacting with urban space. Sometimes representation creates a new reality. For example, in the 1930s, let me just in the 1930s, Robert Moses, a very ambitious man, lived in New York. In the past, he was a futurist poet, and I think this is important. And during the Great Depression, Moses organized his big exhibition for the World's Fair in 1939. This exhibition was organized in the Flushing Meadows district in one of the dirtiest areas of New York. And suddenly there appeared an incredible, futuristic, bright image of the future New York. If you look at the photos that were left from this exhibition, then you really can hardly distinguish this copy from what New York really looked like in the 1960s. The city seems to create a future copy of itself, and then it begin to change based on the principles reflected or engraved in this copy. It's important, I think, because this desire to know your future is absolutely natural. Since ancient times, humanity has been trying to predict or guess what will happen in the near future or even in the distant future. And unfortunately, it is almost impossible to guess the future from the present. Many great people said that personal computers, for example, are impossible, or the phone has no commercial properties to become a means of communication. And all of them were fundamentally wrong, and we know it. So is there a way to avoid these unsuccessful predictions? Actually, maybe there is this way. You just need to stop guessing the future. You need to start modeling it. We need to make it happen. And this is connected with such a movement in art as futurism. Futurism, it took place mainly in Italy and Russia. For example, actually this, you can see it on the slide. For example, the Russian avant-garde artist Kazimir Malevich in 1923 began to create these architectons, or architectons. In Russian, it's architekton, and in English, I suppose it's architecton. So they are models consisting of these plaster bars in the form of cubes. Architectons have no specifics like windows, doors, light, or color. They look like reduced copies of the first skyscrapers, and it's actually pretty interesting, I suppose, because many of Malevich's fantasies were ahead of his time, but just as architectons began to form in his mind. In the same early 1920s, German architect Ludwig Mies van der Rohe invented high-rise buildings, and they were made of glass on a metal frame, so they became, reality. Nevertheless, these architectons cannot be considered prototypes of skyscrapers precisely because Malevich designed something more universal, an architectural principle, an organizational system for any architecture. And in the same, just a moment, in the same 1920s, the architecture finally ceased to be afraid of asymmetry, of lack of balance, of volumes. It forgot that the house should certainly have a facade, that the heavy volumes or volumes that seem heavy cannot be located above the lighter volumes. And there was this new opportunity to play on a comparison of scales, take into account how the light falls and how the shadow fall, make the building different, different from different sides. And of course, many contributed to this, not only Malevich, but Malevich was one of those who shaped the future, showed the very principle of this new architecture, and it is pretty important. And I want to show you this photo. Kazimir Malevich has one photo where we see the panorama of New York, and Malevich painted his suprematist houses, these architectons, right, in this panorama, and it looks natural and good and generic. So here it is. And now I will show you. Now I show you a photograph of the Russian city of St. Petersburg. Recently, St. Petersburg has been recognized as the best tourist city in Europe for the third time. So, for the third time, right? It got something like an Oscar among cities. Interestingly enough, until the beginning of the 20th century, St. Petersburg was not at all considered a beautiful city. It had two public images, and one was more unpleasant than the other. On the one hand, it was the image of a state-owned city, the city of bureaucrats, as opposed to a vibrant, more diverse and free city of Moscow. And on the other hand, it was the city of Dostoevsky. It's a very famous Russian writer. Maybe you've heard about him. So, he's famous because he created this image of St. Petersburg as the city of courtyards, wells, and this eternal twilight of madness and sin in general. It was quite unpleasant image, and all of this has changed through the efforts of Russian artists, partly Mstislav Dobujinsky and mainly Anna Ostraumova-Lebedeva. You can see her name on the slide. And there is this common phrase that Savrasov is Russian artist. Savrasov and Levitan are the Russian artists. They invented the Russian nature because before them it did not exist as an object for sight. So it had to be invented. And we can say that St. Petersburg was invented by Ostraumova-Lebedeva because it became this object for sight, and now we can see this engraving, and we can see that it's quite beautiful. And on the example of these cases, we can talk about the problem, actually, right, of the map and the territory. For the first time, this question, the map and the territory, right, it was raised in a serious scientific discussion by Alfred Korzybski in 1930. You can see it on the slide. In his report, he said that there is a map and there is the territory. There is an object and its display. It's some symbolic representation. So the map, which is most important part, right? The map is not the territory, right? So it's metaphorically illustrated the difference between belief and reality. In art, actually, you can see this in comparison, right? In art, there is this famous work of René Magritte, and the text here says that this is not a pipe, right? But it is a pipe. So this text makes us aware of the difference between representation and actuality, because you cannot use this pipe. You cannot use it, right? It's just an image. It's a name, right? So reality and representation, these things are very different. So the map and the territory, it is always a question of how different orders of reality are interconnected. For example, there is a city, right? We can walk the streets of the city, and then there is its representation in layouts, in urban plans, in development strategies, in the movies, in the photos, and so on and so forth. And what's interesting that sometimes the map substitutes the territory. And now I want to tell you about this very interesting case. It occurred not so long ago. Russian scientist, sociologist Viktor Vachstein talks about this case in one of his video lectures. He also wrote an interesting book about the sociology of everyday life and the theory of frames. But I don't know if there is a translation into English. What I'm telling you right now is largely based on the ideas of Viktor Vachstein. So back to the case. In 2014, the Danish government allocated money to create a copy of Denmark in the game Minecraft. The Danish Geophysical Data Agency loaded everything that they knew about their own country, and as the result, they created a almost perfect representation of Denmark. So they really recreated the entire country of Denmark in Minecraft. It's one of the biggest Minecraft creations ever, made up of about 4,000 billion bricks and 1 terabyte of data, so it was huge. But a problem arose. Unknown virtual vandals learned how to blow up things in the virtual Denmark. So actually, the Danish Geodata Agency, they disabled the ability to use dynamite. But they neglected to disable the minecart with a dynamite item. And players, they discovered this. They set off explosives in several Danish towns and built American tanks and flags on top of these ruins. Right, so you can see it on the slide. And the citizens of Denmark were outraged by this fact, since this virtual copy of Denmark, it became a kind of significant symbolic object, and not just representation of the country. In some computer game, it became very important for them. It became something more. And what else? The authors of these virtual attacks even left inscriptions in illiterate English. I just a bit American displays. That is, it was framed as vandalism, and that was followed by debates, discussions. It turned out that the copy of the model provoked a very strong emotional response, and the map, right, in this case, turned out to be more important in some sense than the territory. Nothing happened to the real Denmark. Only virtual Denmark has suffered. So it seemed that it's not quite as simple that there is this problem with the axiom of Kaczynski. And this problem with the axiom of Kaczynski was noted by one of his followers, Gregory Bateson. He stated that we never deal with a territory. We always deal only with maps. Only these maps can change. For example, we can read the novel of Dostoevsky and start to hate St. Petersburg, or we can see the beautiful prints of St. Petersburg, some engravings, and starting to love it. However, the city remains the same, right? So something only one thing changes. And this is called framing. The theory of frames is an attempt to abandon the firmness of the distinction between the map and the territory. Framing, right, is an abstract concept that serves to organize or structure meanings. This same maps that we have in our heads, because apparently we really deal only with the maps. The territory in all its complexity and multi-dimensionality is not available to us. Framing allows you to influence the perception of information, usually by the audience. And now I want to you can see it, right? It's Pokémon Go in Detroit. Now I want to show you some cases how we can frame the city, some fun cases. So today, with the development of new technologies, we can no longer distinguish between the real reality and the virtual or augmented reality. We can impose virtual space on a physical territory, like catching Pokémon in the middle of the city square. For example, people walk, right, and they catch Pokémon on the streets of the city, and it seems to be a virtual reality, but accidents occur in the real world. Like in Pennsylvania, a 15-year-old girl was playing Pokémon game as she crossed a busy street, and she was hit by a car, so she was hospitalized. And there were a lot of news reports about such accidents. So it seems to be a virtual reality, but it happens in the real reality. And today, not only Pokémon, right? Today, there are many interesting applications of augmented reality that can change our perception of space, urban space. I'm a big fan of this one. It's art. It's called art. It's a collection of works of road art recreated in augmented reality. A collection of famous works of artists from different eras and trends in volumetric interpretation. So fans of Dali, Malevich, here it is, and Kandinsky, they will be delighted. I'm sure am delighted. So they should like these 3D versions of the paintings, and you can, as you see, you can just kind of post it everywhere. So the application has this ability to take photos with the object and download them, for example, in Instagram. And it's, I think it's very exciting, and I have some photos in my telephone. And so, okay. Okay, thank you. So the next one is here. I don't see the movement. It should kind of, you know, no, not like that. It's a GIF. No, okay, it's not a GIF. It's not a GIF. Okay, Blue Sky Paint. The Blue Sky Paint Air Up application turns the sky into a canvas of creativity. You can draw on the sky and see what others have painted, and you know, messages can be painted over, and the whole sky can be simply filled with some kind of paint, like blue or yellow or red. So imagine it's the red sky. And thanks to machine learning, the application recognizes the boundaries of the sky and does not land on the ground. Houses and trees, it's a nice touch. So I actually used this one too, and it makes my life very bright. I mean, you maybe you've heard about Russian winter. We don't have a lot of bright colors here in the winter, so you need to make something. Okay, this one, it's Google's Just a Line app. It's a very popular genre of augmented reality. It's drawing. Everything happens as in any other drawing machine. Only the lines are voluminous and they hang in the air. So the plus, it's a Google application, so it should work just fine. Minus, there is only one color and one brush in it. So just try it. It's very fun. Okay, and I swear this is the last one. And I'm a big fan of this one too. It's Zen Store AR, so you can simply just, you can put stones on each other without any goal. So it is Zen for real. If you get involved in the process, you can build a stone city around you, and that will look like an alien architecture, which is very great and relaxing, and just try to. I think you will love it. And now I want to show you, yes, here. So it's from the first one application. So you see how you can mix virtual reality and just physical space. So it's some of the dogs of Kunz. Maybe you heard about him. It's a very famous painter, artist. Okay, so. So today's city, right? It's a hybrid space. It's a hybrid space combining physical parameters with digital technologies and creative design thinking. And augmented reality applications can completely change our perception of the city. All we need is just mobile phone screen. And today there are no boundaries between the electronic, digital world and the physical world. For example, you can see these QR codes on the buildings, right here on the slide. For example, almost every modern city has them, and by reading this QR code, you can find out what happened in the building, what is its history, or you can find something else. You can just make your own QR codes, and you can change our perception of the building, or maybe not the building, anything actually. So in this sense, physical space and virtual space ceased to be so different. They coexist right now. And for the researcher, this is a big challenge, since traditionally urban space is studied in urban studies, and any phenomena of media and new media are studied in media studies and new media studies. And for a long time, researchers didn't actually interact with each other, developing their own conceptual language, their own methodology, and not noticing that they were actually talking about the same things. And now they need to find some common ground, because they are actually talking about the same things, only from different perspectives. So I think it's pretty exciting, and it's a really great place to start to to interact with all these people. For example, in HSE Art and Design School, we have about 20 BA profiles, and among them we have graphic design, media design, coding design, and environmental design. And students often make collaborative projects. So we just mix all this knowledge, and sometimes it can create this way we can have a very insightful results. And next to the next slide. So I wanted to tell you more about this framing, about frame theory. However, first we need to say, right, what framing is. On the slide we can see the text, right? In social theory, framing is a schema of interpretation, some collection of anecdotes and stereotypes that individuals rely on to understand and respond to events. So, in other words, people build a series of mental filters through biological and cultural influences. They then use these filters to make sense of the world. The choices they then make are influenced by the creation of a frame. So it's just this framing comprises a set of concepts and theoretical perspectives on how individual groups and societies organize, perceive, and communicate about reality. So it's all about reality. You cannot comprehend reality in its fullness, right? It's impossible. And when we want to explain something, our understanding is often based on our interpretation or frame. We only become aware of the frames that we always already use when something forces us to replace one frame with another. So actually we can reframe the city without modern technologies, which is very interesting and fun, and I'm happy that I can tell you about this case. So we can reframe the city without all these mobile screens, applications, and so on and so forth. One of the examples is urban art. In this case, not street art, but the so-called non-spectacular art. Non-spectacular art rejects the entertainment and theatricality of the process itself, and it is located on the border of art and life. One of the founding fathers of this trend, Pavel Altheimer, once hired actors. So these people here on the slide, they are actors. So they reproduce the standard routine actions of the townspeople in the city center, on the city square. So for 30 days, the actors who looked like ordinary townspeople appeared in the same place in the center of Ljubljana. It's the name of the city. An old man with a cane, you can see him feeding pigeons. A young man waiting for his beloved or something. An old lady. So all these characters, they appeared in the same scenery daily, and they all did the same things again and again and again. In order to recognize the performance here, it was necessary to come the next day and see how it all repeated itself. You come the next day and you see the same people doing the same things, and it was a madness. You feel, just imagine it, you feel like something is really wrong. You want to call the police, you want to call the authorities. So this performance was called Script Online. Script Online, and here's documentation, some documents. A policeman, the little old man, the skateboarder. So all the characters here, you can read about them. So what actually happened here? The standard routine actions that people perform in the urban space were transferred in the world of art and then returned back to the urban space. What for? So we can encounter them. This is an example of an attentive attitude towards our own habitat. There is the case of the problematization of our own urban experience, and it makes us think about what is happening with us in the city space, what is happening in our life in general. So Altheimer, he has many interesting artworks, and I will tell you about one of them. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time. So on the anniversary of Poland's independence in 1910, a group of people was invited by Pavel Altheimer to participate in his new performance. As part of this performance, they were turned into prisoners of the Auschwitz concentration camp. They were dressed in camp robes. You can see it here on the slide. They were dressed like this, and they joined the demonstration of left-wing youth, whose goal was to keep pro-fascist groups out of the main streets of Warsaw. British art historian and curator Claire Bishop ranked Altheimer as artist who create his works through other people. Bishop calls this delegated performance. So this concept of delegated performance, it goes back to the idea of social sculpture by German artist. You can see him here. He's very beautiful, handsome German artist Joseph Beuys. In Russian, he's Joseph Beuys, but I will pronounce it as Joseph. So Beuys claimed that every person is an artist, and art is all that lies under the sun. As an artist, he worked on his expanded concept of art. Actually, there is this historical anecdote. A frustrated questioner once shouted at him, "You talk about everything under the sun except art." To which Beuys replied, "Everything under the sun is art." So it means that people build their lives together. Our life in general is our common creation. We are all artists in that sense, right? So every human being is an artist, a freedom being called to participate in transforming and reshaping the conditions, thinking and structures that shape and inform our lives. So Beuys, he articulated the definition of social sculpture. Let's see the example of this artwork of his. So Beuys created the term social sculpture to embody his understanding of art's potential to transform society. The concept of social sculpture is associated with the following ideas. So one of them is that the idea that the artist should participate in social life, and his participation should change the society. The idea that any social organism is a work of art, and the idea that art is not a narrow professional activity but a social and political one. And here this project, one of the most famous projects by Joseph Beuys, it's called 7,000 Oak. So it's one of his most ambitious projects. It began in 1982 at Documenta 7, the large international art exhibition in Kassel, Germany. His project called for the planting of 7,000 trees, each paired with a basalt stone something like 4 feet high and positioned above ground throughout the city of Kassel. So this project took 5 years to complete. The last tree was planted at the opening of the next Documenta 8 in 1987. And both he intended for the Castle project to be the first stage in an ongoing schema of tree planting that would extend throughout the world as part of a global mission to spark environmental and social change. Boyce was going to drive into all the cities along the road and plant there an oak. But he didn't want to plant them himself. He wanted to convince local residents that it was necessary. So he wanted people to plant these trees. For example, two neighbors who didn't even talk to each other after talking to Joseph Boyce, they decided to plant an oak tree together. So to this day, the 7,000 of these trees can be found everywhere in the city of Kassel. So this is kind of a dream, right, of avant-garde artists come true. They wanted people not passively contemplate life, but actively form it. And here I want to rewind a little bit more. From 1980s back in the 1950s and 1960s. So this is when the Situationist International happened. Situationist International happened. It was a relatively small but influential Paris-based group that had its origins in avant-garde movement. I'm going to tell you very, very quickly and short about this movement. So these artists, they were interested in urbanism. They believed that the modern human being is a city dweller, and this city dweller should be engaged in the practice of experimental behavior in the urban environment. And among these situationists was Ivan Shiglov. He was a poet, not an architect. He came up with a large number of urban projects, some urban projects, and they were paper projects because they were impossible to recreate in real life. For example, the city that is obelisk going into the sky in real to an altitude of some kind of 300 kilometers and on the ground to a depth of 60 kilometers, or the city that is starfish, and so on and so forth. And there were several dozen projects like this, mostly completely delusional, but beautiful and inspiring. And you can read about them here in his article, if you maybe you are interested, because it's a very insightful article, and it's called Formulary for a New Urbanism, and there are a lot of there is going here. So it's a text about architecture and all it can be, all it can do, right? So so if you're interested, I think that you can explore it a little bit more. And unfortunately, I need to move to the next slide because we have a little time left, and I really wanted to tell you about this work. It's a concept that situationists invented. It's a concept of psychogeography. Situationists, they came with this term, psychogeography. Psychogeography is the study of how urban space affects human conscience. Since 80s, psychogeography has become popular in Britain and the USA. The goal is to explore the surrounding space. So you can create your own maps of cities, right? So you can explore a little bit. So it's an opportunity to learn new ways to explore the world. Because who needs a map, right? You can flip a coin, you can follow odd patterns, you may get lost, and you can meet the city in these new and exciting ways. And on the slide, we can see a map of Larissa Fassler. She's an artist, and she visualizes her everyday experience. I will focus on only one aspect of her work, namely on fixing the experience of everyday meetings and encounters. This is a method to record everyday life and to share it, to transmit it. This is a continuing chain of everydays. And actually you can use it in some ways, like this. Like in this case, it is an artwork, right? It is a project of the German artist Igor Zakharov-Rose. It's called My Neighborhood. So this project is about public space and what can be done with it. In short, it's a public art. Public art, these are forms of art that change something in social contexts. Act as catalyst for the formation of new social relations. This art is not representative. It is completely out of scope. It is rather an attempt to invade the social environment, an attempt to create new interactions, interconnection systems in it. So this artwork, right, I will shortly tell you about it. It is related to the energy of interaction between different people and cultures. It took place in the Bonn Women's Museum. The point is there is a lot of women who came to Germany from other countries. And they do not know the city. They go from home to the market, they walk and see the locals on the streets with whom they don't interact. And it turns out that the people live in the same city, but these people do not live together. They are separated from each other by an invisible wall. And why women? Because according to the creators of the project, they are more isolated than men. So here comes this team from the University of Bonn and this artist Igor Zakharov, and together they came up with a project. These women were invited to create a map a bit similar to psychogeographical map. They were asked to go through the city and look at the streets, record their impressions on voice recorder. They were asked to bring the museum to the museum some personal items that they brought from home. For example, a rug or a toy, maybe some photos, some drawings, some kind of images. And then they were asked to combine it all, old and new images and records, and create this map. Okay, this is a map. Okay, no, this is a process of creation. Then these maps were hung on the wall, and the residents of the city could come to the museum, put on their headphones, touch the map with a finger, like this, right? Just a finger, you can touch it. and hear the voice of this woman, see her rug, see her toy, some souvenirs, evidence of her past life, and connect with her. So fundamentally, we are social beings, and we all need this connection. Feeling connected allows us to feel a sense of belonging, and artworks such as this help people to feel it, to be seen by others. This way, we can create better communities. So in this museum, participants of the project they met the locals, the residents of the city, and it was very wholesome because they all shared some kind of inside joke. They laughed, they talked, they brought kids. It was brilliant. They danced. Unfortunately, I wasn't there. I wish I was there. So just don't dismiss psychogeographical maps. The difference between just walking down the street and the art of psychogeography is an awareness and creativity. You can walk down the street. You can be aware of what is happening. You are open to new ideas. You see, you hear, you feel. You are open to new ideas, and you can see the problem, and you can find a solution to this problem. And today, technologies, they are very soon technologies will create everything and anything, and the question is what to create, right? And the union of creativity and technology will produce some fantastic results. And in the end of this little webinar, I'd like to show you this book, right? It's called The City of Tomorrow: Sensors, Networks, Hackers, and so on and so forth, by Carlo Ratti and Matthew Clodo. And they came up with this concept of participatory city, and it's very interesting. In this book, they discuss, among other things, the concept of participatory city. In such a city, the sharing economy, tolerance for customization, individual customization of any activities will become a norm. So increasing participation in everyday activities to high levels could help to transform people's lives and the neighborhoods in which those people live. And it sort of looks like utopia, but on the other hand, remember Robert Moses and his New York of the future. This project also looked like utopia in 1930s. And perhaps today's utopia is tomorrow's future. So I think that this is the last thing that I wanted to talk about, and now is the time for the questions, right? Maybe we don't have them. Okay. Actually, if we don't have questions, then I can talk a little bit about this case I wanted to talk about here. This is a fun case. So a couple of years ago, in the Finnish city of Häme in Lima, there was a new district, and the city council made a virtual map of the existing city, left an empty area where the construction was planned, and shared this map. And everyone could download the map and create their own version of this district and submit it to the city for consideration. So I don't know if they built something or not, but it doesn't matter. What is important that each person could offer their own version of the city. So this idea, right, that each of us is an artist, it can find concrete implementation in everyday life. Initiatives can come not only from administrative organizations, but also from below. These are so-called grassroots initiatives, so grassroots movements. Here on the slide you can see this term, grassroots movements and organizations. They use collective action from the local level to effect change at the local, regional, national or international level. And these grassroots movements using self-organization, they encourage community members to contribute by taking responsibility and action for their communities. So I think that it's pretty important to use this concept of Joseph Beuys to remember that everyone is an artist, right? And art is everything that lies under the sun, because our life it is our common creation. So I want to show you this one thing. It's a psychogeographical map of Paris. Actually, it's not a Paris from the photos and from the common photos, conventional photos and movies. It's something different. It's a geographical map of Paris, and it allows us to encounter this city of Paris and see it in the different light. So, and you can actually do it in your own city. You can just, you can flip the coin, or you can use an app. In Russian, there is this app. It's called Deriv Strannaru. Stranna means weird or strange or odd, something like that. And I tried it. So I just, I was walking the street, and I was taking my directions from my app, and it gave me some directions like turn to the right, go to the left, and so on and so forth. And yes, you can get lost, but also you can find some pretty exciting things, and you can see your own city in a different light. And I think that it is important not to feel, not to feel the oppressiveness, because we are used to see our city in some light. We used to perceive it in some way. And now we can change it. We can change our ways. We can change our path, and we can change our city, our frame of our city, our perception of the city. And it's pretty important, I think. So this is it. No questions. Okay, so guys, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I really hope that you gathered something from this little webinar that can be of use, and I really hope that it was kind of fun. So good day to you, and goodbye.